Welcome all hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters to the only fish and wildlife conservation podcast that goes behind the scenes of the business of conservation, the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Our podcast is hosted by John Gassett from the Wildlife Management Institute and Jim Cucaruto of the Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation. John and Jim will talk with experts from all sectors of the conservation arena about their passion for conserving the great outdoors. So please welcome our hosts of the Connecting with Conservation podcast, John and Jim.
Hello again, I'm John Gassett with Connecting with Conservation. I'm here with my co-host, Jim Cucaruto, and our special guest, Joel Hodgdon from RCBS. Jim?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us, Joel, and good to see you again, John. Excited that, we're keeping the ball rolling. Had some really good guests on the past couple times, but looking forward to talking to Joel. So, hey, Joel, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what's going on?
Yeah, would love to. Well, John and Jim, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. So I'm Joel Hodgdon again. I grew up here at Hodgdon Powder, my family's business, and kind of spent a career in the industry. Did a lot of different things and had a chance to go work for a lot of great brands around the shooting and hunting industry. So I spent time at Federal Ammo and Remington Ammo, at the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, which does some great things for wildlife conservation and outdoor policy. And recently I made the move back to come work for my family when we acquired a new business. We bought RCBS Reloading here this last spring, which is just amazing to be part of a company that's been making great presses and dies and powder dispensers and everything else since 1943.
Cool. Do y'all tell us about your other product lines? Do you still have some of your family business, the product lines there? Or are you strictly, RCBS, the dies and presses and that sort of thing?
Yes, sir. So, of course, Hodgdon Powder, well-known name and on our little part of the industry, right? We're still a small family-owned business that's focused on reloading, on hand loading. But whether you're talking about Hodgdon, IMR, Winchester, or Western powders, those are all part of kind of the Hodgdon family of brands, right? And so, lots of steel getting hit, lots of prairie dogs getting vaporized or deer getting smacked over the years with Hodgdon Powder, which is a lot of fun. But yes, kind of my personal focus as the marketing and product guy for RCBS is our reloading tooling company, which is based out of a cool little place called Oroville, California.
Very cool. So, you and I have known each other for a while. So I did a lot of research, past 15 years. One of the segments that, we haven't done a lot of research on is reloading and the powder and the primer and stuff. But I mean, there's a lot of people that do it, but it just seems there's not a ton of information on it. So what's the best way for folks to get started reloading and learn about reloading and, as a hobby or as an activity?
Yeah, great question, Jim. So I think it kind of starts off like why somebody might want to reload at all, right? I mean, these days, you can walk into all kinds of different stores or get online and buy a box of ammo shipped to your door. Heck, so why go through all the time and the expense, frankly, of loading your own? So there's a few reasons why people still do it. If you are a couple hundred rounds a week type guy or gal and you're out there shooting a ton, I think at that volume, reloading starts to make sense again economically, right? Like you might be able to go and shoot more for the same amount of dollars that you'd be spending on factory ammo. Kind of one of the big drivers of reloading these days is precision. So, I worked for factory ammo companies. Factory ammunition has come a long, long way since the days of the 60s or 70s from an accuracy standpoint, from a quality standpoint. But truly, if you're a high-end competitor shooting something like the Precision Rifle series, even getting into something like 3-gun, right? I mean, you really want the absolute most performance out of your individual rifle, your pistol possible. And so to do that, you have to reload, right? And kind of hand customize your ammunition for the gun that you're going to go shoot. So that's a big driver of it. There's kind of a third angle I think a lot of folks take with hand loading. We all remember a few years ago during COVID, you couldn't find 223, let alone toilet paper, right? So the fact that you can have an RCBS press and a can of Hodgdon powder and some spear bullets or Starline brass, whatever, in your basement, and if it comes down to it, you can create your own ammunition. that's kind of a nice fallback, kind of good thing to have sitting around just in case you ever need it. So from an availability standpoint, that's a great reason to reload.
You can't make your own toilet paper, but you can make your own ammunition. If one of the things that helped me doing, and it's been a while since, I'm kind of out of it now, but I'm ready to get back in. But it did help me from my accuracy and precision standpoint, not just because I'm putting together more consistent loads, but it sort of forces you to go shoot more. And there's no substitute for that. If you just buy a box of ammo every other year and go shoot a few deer, that's one thing. But if you're reloading, you're constantly testing new rounds and new loads, and you're on the gun a lot more. So if you enjoy that, I found a lot of pleasure in doing it myself, and then plus I got more time at the range.
I totally agree. It's a great way to learn everything you ever wanted to know about your firearm, your rifle, your pistol. Like I said, to be able to customize a load for your gun, there's a lot of pride in that. And I think if you're a fisherman and you tie your own flies and you catch that just huge old rainbow trout, I mean, there's a sense of pride and accomplishment in that you might not get just buying somebody else's fly. I think kind of the same way with hand loading, right? When I'm kind of a hunter first and then a shooter. So, when I go out on that big mule deer hunt that I've saved up for and planned for, and I shoot that sucker with a bullet that I loaded and ammo that I customized for my gun, I mean, it's just kind of it's a cool thing to go do. And it's a lot of fun too.
That is cool. And pretty much anybody can do it. And I'll attest to that because my dad and I mean, like years and years ago, he bought all the stuff for it. And we went out and shoot, trap every week at the local club, and got to save every single shell. So we went back and we reload after we get a couple hundred of them. And he would put a little mark on those, yellow shells, and some of them had 5-6 marks on them. And I was telling John earlier, I put them in my vest to shoot. And when I take them out to shoot, some of them become rattles. And I'm like, Dad, I think we don't need to reload the same shell 6 or 7 times, but like anybody could do it. And it is fun. It's, do something to do with the family, teach the kids how to do something. So
I was just going to say, I think my dad only had my brother and myself so that he had somebody to prep brass while he was loading bullets, right? I mean, it's truly, if you got kids, there's no better use for your 8, 9, 10-year-old than sticking them in the basement with you and making some ammo. So, I mean, it's a cool hobby. There's some heritage in there, Jim. You're right. My dad taught me to reload. Sounds like your dad taught you to reload. I think there's some pride in there and some cool heritage and tradition that, comes along with a lot of other stuff we like to do outside. But it's been a lot of fun. And to your point, it is easy to get into. There's a bit of a learning curve, right? It's like taking on any other new hobby or learning to work on your car or whatever, change your own oil. But, whether it's RCBS or Hornady or any of the other companies out there, you can go buy a kit, right? So if you're brand new and you want to get into reloading, first thing I'd recommend is, get on rcbs.com, get on hodgdon.com. We've got some great videos and PDFs on step A to Z, right? Everything you ever want to know about reloading. Take a little time and educate, check it out, watch a video or two. And then when you're ready to take that step, you can go out and buy a kind of a reloading kit. So it's got your press, your powder measure, all the accessories you might need, like a brass prep deburr chamfer tool, a loading block for your ammunition, some case lube. So it's kind of everything you need in a box. And, once you get into it, you probably want to upgrade your powder measure maybe, or you may want to swap out for a different tool. You decide you want to do something a different way. But that being said, a kit's just a great way to get started and have everything that you need and go from there.
Well, and it's the perfect, for kids that are homeschooled, you want a good STEM exercise, science, technology, engineering, and math. You get it all right there in one package because, you got everything from, how the sizing cartridges to powder burn rates to, how the bullet expands and the ballistics and all that. So you can do everything you can do in a STEM classroom just at the reloading press.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think it's amazing. When I was growing up, and maybe like a lot of listeners or folks watching this video, we didn't have YouTube, right? You couldn't just hop online and learn how you wanted to put together a rifle round or a pistol round or whatever. Well, now there's so many great resources out there, and guys are doing really cool kind of home science experiments on, optimal charge weights, on the right seating depth, on the best process or way to do something. And so you can go as deep as you want to go. And there's some really good science and engineering being done behind the stuff too.
Yeah, that's cool. So, it all ties into conservation, right? You need the gun to shoot what you're reloading. And if you're buying regular bullets and you're buying a hunting license or, even a range pass or whatever at your DNR range, it all goes back to support conservation. But I know you personally have a heavy interest in conservation, and I believe you're on the board, or you were on the board, maybe you still are, on Pass It On Outdoor Mentors, and that's one of the great organizations out there supporting youth participation. Are you still involved with those guys, or?
I am, yeah. And I don't know how many folks have heard about Pass It On Outdoor Mentors. We got started here in Kansas. Been around for 20 years plus now. Gentleman by the name of Mike Christensen came out of Big Brothers and Big Sisters, just an awesome program. And it was Mike's passion to kind of teach kids how to hunt and shoot and fish and get them outside. And he realized there's just a big need for that, right? And so over time, kind of Mike's hunting program within Big Brothers Big Sisters morphed out and grew and became Pass It On. And there's a lot of great groups out there, Jim, John. I mean, I know y'all know of many of them that are getting kids outside and mentoring them and doing recruitment, retention, reactivation, right? R3. But Pass It On has a really cool model where all through their website, whether you're a youth or a parent who wants to get into this, whether you're a landowner and you have a place to take somebody out turkey hunting, or whether you're a mentor and you've shot enough birds, you say, hey, I want to teach the next generation. Pass It On kind of brings those three groups together and says, hey, how do we connect all these different people that might not know each other, but have a lot in common, right? And have something they want to go do. And so right now we're in 4 or 5 different states and we're growing all the time. So we're based here in the Midwest. And so I'd encourage folks to check us out on Pass It On Outdoor Mentors. But good group. It's good to get youth into it. And like you said, Jim, end of the day, it's more dollars going back into Pittman Robertson, back into Dingle Johnson, and helping conservation work on the ground.
Well, and that's what you said there really hits the nail on the head as far as what we know about hunter recruitment. The hunter adoption model that was created for the R3 movement, and WMI had a big part in that. But one of the big components to it is there's got to be multiple opportunities, multiple touches. It can't be you can take a kid fishing, a teenage kid fishing one time and give them a rod and reel, and they can go fishing on their own pretty much after that. But hunting takes a number of, it takes that support system, that social support system, number of opportunities. It takes mentors. It takes all those different components. It sounds like Pass It On's touching those bases. So that's great.
We're trying. And it's kind of like, we're talking about how we got into reloading. Most guys I know or gals, you kind of had a reloading mentor, right? Like you had somebody that's kind of showing you the ropes, or somebody to ask questions to, whether it's a family or a buddy, a guy at your gun club or gal. I mean, that's kind of how you get into it. And so what we found is that's exactly right, John. I mean, with Pass It On and with recruiting youth, it's hard to get into hunting, guys. I mean, you got to have the right gear. You got to know a lot of stuff. It's more than just passing your hunter's ed and getting out there. And so having a mentor, having somebody that kids can look up to and say, hey, how do we get into this hobby and learn more about it and get some field experience? That's so important. And, along the way, there's all kinds of great stories I could share with y'all about, kids that met some just great role models, period, through this program and through hunting and fishing. And, folks that, I'm thinking of one event where we had some kids out to do like a youth fishing derby. And this, one of the kids' moms came along and mentioned the fact that, she hadn't left kind of where they lived in the inner city of this area in this urban environment for 20 years. Right. And so just the fact that she was able to get out and have a day outside just meant so much to her and to her kids. And so you think about, we're all pretty blessed guys that we grew up doing this stuff and part of it. And so I think the fact that you can get somebody outside, help out with conservation and be a positive influence, I mean, it's pretty special.
Yeah. And there's a lot of groups involved in, conservation. We got the nonprofits, but we've got the excise taxpayers, which, we used to work for those folks at Remington and federal. And then you've got the state DNRs, and then you've got the end users. So we kind of talked to, you can't succeed without all 4 parts, but unsung heroes are really a lot of those DNR folks that, get their hands dirty and wet doing that conservation work with the dollars that come in from excise taxes or from hunting and fishing license sales. And I know when you were with Remington, I think in Arkansas, you worked with the Arkansas DNR pretty closely there. Are you guys working with, Kansas Department of Natural Resources, or you have plans to, or?
Yeah, so right now we don't have a formal relationship at Hodgdon with the Kansas DNR, but we've got some great connections over there. Their former chief legal counsel is a good buddy of mine, is now doing some work in the nonprofit space and conservation side of things as well. You probably know Chris Tymason, Jim.
You're not talking about Thomason, are you?
I'm talking about Tymason. I know. Good dude, man.
Did you say good friend, or was there an audio issue?
Yeah, we don't know him.
Yeah, there you go. Who? Yeah, well, he's gonna love that. But no, I mean, I think Hodgdon's, obviously helped out with the Kansas DNR, or Kansas Department of Wildlife, I guess I should say, for a long time, and so it's something we need to kind of get back into. I know most of us around the office, I think probably all of us, as well as our production facility in Harrington, Kansas, we're members of Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, of Mule Deer Foundation, of the National Turkey Federation, of Rocky Mountain Elk, right? Whatever it is, I know it's a passion for most of us here at our company. And we all buy plenty of licenses, right, every year, whether it's chasing that Kansas buck or that Kansas turkey. And I dare say we're paying a lot into PR as well when we're buying ammo and guns and all that other good stuff. So, no, Kansas Department of Wildlife does an awesome job. Within the last couple of years, they split off part of their function, right? So it used to be the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. And so they kind of split that park piece, kind of that more outdoor tourism piece away. And now the department is focused just on wildlife conservation and management, and overseeing what we do here in Kansas for our wildlife, game and non-game species. So I think that's been a positive kind of focus area for our department here locally. And I know they do a great job.
They do. They have one of the few that I think started the walk-in program, or do you guys have that there?
Yeah, I could talk about that. Yep. So another point of pride for me as a native Kansan, and I've lived all around the country since then, guys. And I know states like, I think, Kentucky as well, Missouri, Arkansas, several others do a good job with this too. But Kansas, I believe, had one of the first kind of, they call it a public access private ownership program. And here in Kansas, our program is called the WEHA. It's the Walk-in Habitat Access Program. So as a landowner, what you could do, and this has been around 20 years now plus, I think, guys, something like that. You can enroll your acreage in the Kansas WEHA program, and the state will give you some help and support from, habitat management experts they have on staff, biologists they have on staff. They'll come out and kind of give you some tips and tricks on your property. The state also has some funding available through the program to kind of help you do some work. And then they provide some insurance and some liability coverage, I believe. And then in exchange for that assistance, you as the property owner will then allow the public onto your property to do some hunting. Now, it's not, come onto my property and burn all the trees down and chainsaw an ATV trail through. No, it's you kind of select, hey, I want to be able to allow upland hunting. I want to be able to allow deer hunting, whatever. And so I know some landowners around the state see a lot of value in that. And as the public, it's a great way to get out there and have some access to private ground. Here in Kansas, I think we're something like 95% private ground, right? We don't really have a lot of public ground like a lot of the Western states do, or states with federal land within their boundaries. And so for us as Kansans, it's a great way to still access a lot of really cool habitat respectfully, have a chance to go hunt, and for the landowners, get some help with their properties and not be too worried about somebody, breaking a leg on a quail hunt and suing you, right?
We do have a program like that in Kentucky, but it was I always thought a lot harder to do here, because if you think about it, when you get to the Great Plains states, most every state from that point west are all government survey states. So there's sections, quarter sections, roads run north, south, east, and west. You can easily define. In Kentucky, we're what they call a meets and bounds state, which means the survey is the big white oak tree up the hill to a rock, and it follows the meander of a stream. And it's like, put that in a regulation to tell somebody where they can go. It's like almost impossible. So I was always envious of the prairie states that with the sections. It's like, what a great way to have a hunter access area. It's like you can go from this road to that road. You have 640 acres here or 1,280 or whatever, and you have at it. So
it helps a lot. And, I think a lot of guys and gals in our community, I'm not Mr. Big Government, good job government typically, but I will say that kind of the public-private partnership between what we're able to do here in the state with something like WEHA, and then as well with some federal help layered in, so through the Farm Bill, enrolling your ground and CRP, whatever that's like, I know some landowners can kind of, I don't want to say double dip, but you're able to kind of enroll your property in different programs and reap the benefits of creating good habitat with federal dollars to help species as a whole. And then also helping, local shooters and hunters or whatever that's like that live in your state, come from your state, access your property and reap some benefits from that too. So it's a really cool, I think, fusion of public and private in a way that, at least in Kansas, it works for a lot of us.
Cool. Another quick connection there is the guy that hired me for WMI was the guy, I think, that was the secretary that started that in Kansas. And by the way, he also hired Chris Thomason out there. So Steve Williams. Yeah, Steve's was my boss, recently retired. So I remember him talking about standing that program up. And that's awesome. I wish more states could do those sorts of things. So.
And I think there's more and more of them, guys, right? So it's good to see other states getting in that mix. Like I said, a lot of credit to the Kansas Department of Wildlife for getting that done.
So you guys, I know we're kind of in the heart of hunting season right now, big game season. You have plans to get outside yourself, or you're going to introduce somebody new this season? I know in the past you had obviously done that with outdoor mentors, but.
Yeah. So I think, like most of us this time of year, my throat gets a little bit bigger, and I start scraping up on trees and thinking really hard about being in the woods instead of being in the office, right? So, as we record this, it's the end of November here, and in Kansas, our rifle season's kind of late, right? So we always kick off the first Wednesday in December, and then it's usually about a 2-week season, kind of running through middle of the month until about the Christmas holiday. So you're usually a little behind rut if you're waiting for Kansas rifle season. But that being said, there's some big bucks that are still up and moving around. So I'm looking forward to sitting in a tree stand for a few days and getting to do some of that.
Good thing about that post rut is they're hungry then. They don't eat much when they're after does, but when they get done, they're looking for food then. So they
hear that corn feed or dinner bell kick on, and sprays out, and they come, right. It's a beautiful thing, but no, looking forward to Kansas rifles. So what about you guys? Anything still left on the punch list for this year?
I've been a little too busy working, but I got a buddy that's got a new dog, first season out, sniffing around for pheasants. And actually Connecticut does a really good job with put and take pheasants. Plenty of opportunities here. So I've been out with him 3 or 4 times. My 82-year-old father just climbed up a tree stand, called me yesterday morning, shot a big 6-pointer in New York. So luckily his young friend, 65-year-old, and him dragged out of the woods. But so he's already filled the freezer there. He's got one with the crossbow and now a second with the gun. Saved me some time to get out and fill my freezer. So that helps me, but I still want to get out and try to knock down a couple of geese or mallards, but dang, work's getting in the way for me, Joel. How about Johnny?
Well, I've got we picked up a couple of leases in Adams, Brown County, Ohio this year, so I'm huge bucks on camera. I just, I've sat 3 afternoons. I was like, I got to get back up there. And of course, their rifle season starts Monday after Thanksgiving, so looking forward to getting after those. And believe it or not, and we talked about this on a couple of other episodes, but I got drawn for a Kentucky elk tag this year. That was my first job in Kentucky. I was the deer and elk biologist, deer and elk coordinator. So I turned most of them loose, and now I'm having the opportunity 25 years later to go try to hunt one. I already had 2 weeks in September and failed miserably. Of course, Hurricane Helene showed up at the end of my 2 weeks, so that did a lot of 80-mile-an-hour winds in the mountains and 6 to 8 inches of rain. Not good elk hunting, I'll tell you. But I got another week coming up mid-December that I can go after one more time. So,
man, what a conservation success story. In your lifetime to put boots on the ground, hooves on the ground, right, that animal back onto that landscape, and then to have a chance at harvesting one off. I mean, that's so cool, John. That's awesome.
Something you may not know: the first 7 elk turned loose in Kentucky, the first ones to walk on Kentucky soil in 150 years, came from Kansas.
No kidding. Okay. Yep.
And then we got one more load later on once I got here, and they were the meanest damn elk I ever had to deal with. They bit us and fought with us, and I was like, no more Kansas elk.
Well, I think you probably took the last 5 from Kansas. We have all of 15 of them hanging around our part of the state, but no, that is a huge success story, and we've got a nice little kind of under the radar elk population out in western Kansas, right? That originally pushed off that front range coming from Colorado and kind of high elevation Nebraska even down. So yeah, they're not exactly Boone and Crockett level monsters, but there's some cool elk out west if anybody ever gets a chance.
Well, and ours actually came off, I think, one of the either is it Fort Peck or Fort Riley, I think, has a herd there, and they needed to get rid of some, and we needed to get elk on the ground before the legislature met, and could shut us down. So he's like, all right, we'll take those. So we had 4,000 people on a hillside in Kentucky in December watching those 7 elk walk out of a trailer, and of course, once they're on the ground, they really couldn't stop us then. So our legislature couldn't stop us then. So we rolled with it.
Man, that's something special. Yeah, Fort Riley, Kansas, right? Big Army Red One out of there, and not too far from Kansas State University. They've got a great ag program and some wildlife management type things. If anybody is looking for a good school, but no, that's really cool. I living in Arkansas the last few years, our elk population in Arkansas has been going gangbusters as well. So they've opened up a hunt there again. I don't know how about 100 years plus, but in years and years and years.
Yeah, when I first came to Kentucky as elk guy, I went and watched their first elk hunt in Arkansas just to see how they did it, and I was really impressed with what they've done. And the great thing about this is, tying this back into our podcast and connecting with conservation, is that restoration, the Missouri restoration, the Kentucky restoration, the Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, all were paid for with excise tax dollars. If we hadn't had those excise tax dollars, we couldn't have done that landscape level restoration of sort of an iconic big game species in the East. Just wouldn't happen. So,
I mean, it's the greatest story as hunters and anglers and shooters. We don't do a good enough job of telling, right? And I know Jim and Outdoor Stewards and John, you at Wildlife Management. I mean, y'all have been beating that drum for years and doing a great job. But man, if you're listening to this podcast, get out there and tell that story, right? About how wildlife conservation is paid for. I can't tell you how many friends that I went to college with or hang around with, afterwards. And I tell them what I do for a living. And I tell them how, every time they're buying ammo or a rifle, fishing tackle or motorboat fuel, they're paying into this stuff, and they had no idea. Right. I mean, you buy this stuff, you're part of it, right? You're giving back. And so I think we just got to tell more folks and get that news out there, because it's a special story.
Yeah, it definitely is. And great way to kind of wrap this up here. I guess let us know if you got anything new and exciting for RCBS coming up product wise. And again, one more time, your website and your social tags on where folks can learn a little bit more about getting started reloading.
Yeah, appreciate that. Well, if anybody out there wants to get going reloading, rcbs.com has some great resources for you. We're on YouTube as well under RCBS Reloading. And we want to make it easy, and it's safe, and it's fun, and it's a great way to have a good time and take something that you're proud of from your basement or your reloading bench right out to the range or on that hunt. So definitely come find us. This is our first year kind of back at SHOT Show, right? We got a brand new booth and a bunch of new products coming out in 2025. So follow us along on just follow RCBS on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all the above, and stay tuned. We got some cool stuff coming between now and the end of the year. Right now through the end of December, RCBS is running a massive deal that we call it our Buy Green Get Green, right, for our green products. So when you buy a certain amount of RCBS gear, equipment, it can be any of our products. You buy enough of it, we're giving you a cash rebate, right? So really easy to qualify for that, whether you're picking up one of those new reloading kits at Bass Pro or midway.com or wherever, rcbs.com. All you do is take your receipt and go to buygreengetgreen.com, and you can put in for our rebate and get some cash back on that purchase. So if you're on the fence about reloading and you don't know if it's for you, try it out. Come buy a press from us, a kit from us, get some cash back, and get loading.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Joel, we appreciate you being on. It's always interesting to listen to different segments of the conservation machine, as we like to call it, from the hunters and anglers to the agencies to the federal agency that moves this money for us, the manufacturers that pay it, and even the precursor manufacturers. You're making products that ultimately go into taxable products. So, we've reached out a lot to excise tax paying industry, but we've also tried to reach, that next step down to folks that, you're building there are people that build components for archery equipment that aren't taxed, but the equipment is once it's assembled. So it's like, that's sort of a neat group to get to because, it spreads our reach so much wider, spreads that message so much wider about how conservation is paid for in this country. So we appreciate that. And to our listeners, thank you for listening. Please download our podcast, subscribe to them, like them if you like them. Please indicate that on our sites, our platforms. And thanks again for listening. We'll see you in the woods or on the water.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Please do us a favor and tell your buddies, friends, family, and others about what you've learned here today. If you like what you heard, come on back anytime and listen to another episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast.